Hello and welcome to my little podcast in my little corner of the world. Well over to you. Thank you so much for tuning in, no matter where you're at, whether you're in England, maybe even way down there in Australia, or across the United States of America, where I believe most folks are listening from. But anyway, I got a great show today here in early March of 2026. I cannot believe it. This year is flying. I just had a wonderful birthday, and I'm talking to you all and having a great time speaking with so much great talent that comes on this program. Not really weekly. I haven't had time to do too many of these lately, so it's been a little bit less than usual, but I've been really having a great time doing it whenever I can talk to some really wonderful folks. And this week is no different. I speak with UMass professor from Lowell, Massachusetts. They say Lowell, Lowell. Everybody, especially in Massachusetts, they pronounce things really, really crazy up there. It's very, very interesting. So many different things that they say, and I'm like, oh my gosh. No, one is the Alewife train station. It's spelled like Alewife. Just crazy stuff like that. Having a good time though. Glad you could all join me here. Alan Williams is a wonderful, gifted musician, singer, songwriter, teaches music up there at UMass. And what a wonderful conversation I had. We just had a blast, and I hope you do too. And I will talk with you all on the other side of this.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Great. And I always start this off. Where are you broadcasting from this afternoon?
This is my office at the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Lowell. I love Massachusetts. My daughter lived in Boston for about 3 years right after she graduated from the University of South Carolina.
Oh,
Visited her there twice when she was there, and then she moved to New Jersey, and now she's in Moline, Illinois.
she gets around. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. I've been out of school six, almost 7 years now, something like that. Gosh, she's gonna have her 10th high school reunion this year. Wow. I don't know where that went.
That's how that happens. I know. I know. Yeah, Columbia, South Carolina would be a little different than Boston for sure.
Yeah, yeah. She wanted the big city. So she
Yeah.
grew up here in the metro Atlanta area. That's where I'm at.
Oh, okay.
And wanted something bigger and something more exciting. Boston is definitely it. It's beautiful. I had no reason to go there all the years of living here in the South, and I grew up in the Midwest and just never had a chance. And then she moved there, and I visited a few times. Actually got to go to Fenway Park to see Billy Joel, which was
Ah, what do you know?
it was his first concert back from COVID,
Right.
and
Okay.
had a ball, just a blast there. I love that place. Fenway's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
It was an amazing place. I'm not a baseball fan, but I've been there because you have to go to a game.
Yeah, yeah.
Have to experience it. Yeah. Billy Joel actually played here at UMass Lowell. He was doing these things where he would select a handful of music programs and then go do a concert and talk. I don't know. This was some time back, obviously, but it was. He was such a nice guy. He was really easy to deal with,
Yeah.
which is not what I expected. I kind of expected the big star and lots of
Right.
stuff, and he was besieged. I think most of the students didn't really know who he was, but
That's actually good, right?
all the faculty certainly were like, "Can you sign all my albums?" Uh, and he was just very gracious, and um, I really liked some of the messaging he was giving students about making music and balancing life and career, and he brought students to come up and play and do all sorts of nice.
Neat.
Yeah, it was a good experience.
That's really cool. And I know he did these master classes back in the early 2000s and probably the late 90s as well.
Yeah.
And, that's really cool when somebody who's just like, that's the pinnacle of success in the music business is where he got. And for him to go and give advice and do those kind of things is just really, it's inspiring to see that. It's very nice to see that.
Absolutely, because they don't need to do that. There's nothing to
Yeah.
promote. There's nothing they get out of it other than I think, as you know, in a small way, I can relate. Like, I get energy from being around college students all the time, and I can imagine just connecting with humans that are not so distant. Like if he's playing a stadium or even a ballpark, he's not really interacting.
Yeah.
And getting to a much smaller places, that probably a nice thing.
Yeah. Fenway's got pretty good acoustics. I did a what they call a package, a feature on his lead guitarist, and I went backstage to interview him. And I saw Billy there. I didn't want to bother him, but he was back there going over the set list with his manager. But it was really, really fascinating to see that. But like acoustics wise, those kind of stadiums are just not that wonderful. It doesn't really carry that. It depends where you're sitting too, as well. But Fenway is just such a nice little,
It's
more
true.
of like a venue that's more conducive to it.
Right. It's almost like your neighborhood ballpark at this
Yeah,
point. But yeah.
it is. It is. And they don't have too many of that these days. Wrigley and Fenway, it's like we don't keep tradition very well here in the US.
No, we don't. But anyway.
Absolutely not. So you're a professor. How long have you been doing this teaching and being at UMass?
I have been teaching at UMass a little over 30 years, which is staggering. And I fell into it as a lot of, I think, music related teaching. We're musicians and someone says, "Hey, do you want to come help out with a course or something?" And that seems like, wow, you mean like a regular paycheck for a couple of months? I will do it. But I really fell in love with the classroom with teaching. So for a few years, I balanced trying to make music, and I was doing more like recording engineering work for other people with teaching here. And then eventually got a full-time position, and that's when it became clear that yes, you get summers off, but you really have to commit to a bunch of things that I gradually understood what that meant. So.
Sure, sure. And you were considered a label artist before you did all this?
Well, I've been to many label offices. Is that the same? Um,
And our guys, all
yeah,
that.
exactly. There was a band I was in after graduating from college, and we ended up signed to Island at a weird inflection point for them. We began working with Denny Cordell, who was a bit of a music legend from the way back. He had retired from music and then decided to get back in the early 90s. And for some reason, he liked our band. So, but he didn't like our rhythm section,
Yeah,
which is
go
okay
figure.
because our rhythm section was actually kind of like our friends who weren't in the band, but they would help us out. So we did this crazy set of recordings with Steve Riley and the Mamu Playboys in Crowley, Louisiana. And then we did get to spend a weekend in Muscle Shoals with the Muscle Shoals rhythm section,
Oh,
which is
that's awesome.
high
Yeah,
point in my life.
legendary.
Yeah. But then before we could even really do anything with the recordings, Chris Blackwell sold the label to Polygram, and they gutted everybody who wasn't last name Marley or U2. And so that was it, sort of a flirtation with the big leagues. But um, yeah, I would say I've seen the offices, you know?
That's close enough, really, to be near such legends as well, and to be in that kind of a environment, and that brings a lot to the classroom. And I'm sure you bring that to students.
Exactly. I teach a history of rock course. I'm teaching it starting tomorrow. And, at some point, we'll just be showing some video clip of Aretha Franklin in the studio going, "Oh, wow, it's Jimmy. It's all these people. It's Roger. I know these people. Know them in that I've worked with them for a few days, but still, we were on a first name basis, though, they've passed and would never remember me anyway. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
You cross a lot of paths in the business too, so it's kind of interesting how people, they could remember certain people, but others not. I took a history of rock and roll class. This is in the mid 80s when I was at Ohio University.
Mhm.
And that was considered at that time like, oh, this is really renegade. And what are you taking a blow off class like this? But it was
Right.
like so much information. It was really cool, and I really loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really true. I think, I mean, I will put the word out tomorrow that, hi, I know many of you are thinking this will be a really easy a class to just sleepwalk through. It'll be fun, whatever. No, I really want you to know it's a very serious upper level course. It's a lot of places that do rock histories do big giant lecture halls full. because just from a numbers point of view, you can pack them in. But I do it as a small, sort of almost like a graduate seminar, and we just talk about the things that we've listened to and read and such. So um, once I give them the lay of the land, I usually have a few people that decide to pass and go find something that is in fact an easy class. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, word gets out there.
Where
But
did it
if you're
go?
really into it, which I was, and then I think part of like the midterm or final, we went to see Stevie Ray Vaughan and kind of
Oh,
review that and just like deconstruct that. It was just I was so grateful that we had that opportunity just
right.
to see him working like that. And yeah, I mean, you could really go through and just look at lyrics and how do lyrics come together. It's just to me, it's so fascinating. They're all musicians, magicians to me.
Yeah.
Like Bernie Taupin's a magician to me. I mean, like, how do you write these? Where do you come up with these lines? How do you do this? And going back to all these people.
For sure. Bernie is not one of my favorite lyricists, partly because I think, in a way, the quality you're alluding to, you're just wondering, going, who has the audacity to think that's a lyric?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know he has, he's received a lot of criticism over the years. There are people who picked apart those lyrics, especially the stuff from Madman Across the Water. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, they're really tearing this thing apart. But it's interesting to read critics,
Yeah,
stuff like
and
that.
we should make up our own minds. But Elton sees something in those words,
Yeah.
and when he sings them, they seem much more logical and, well, of course, that's exactly what one would say at that point in the song. Um, but when you just, for me, when I just look at the words, it doesn't make any sense at all. And when you talk about a magician quality, for me, the genius is Elton
Yeah.
understanding how that speaks to him as a piece of music, and then, and evidently works quite quickly. And it's, uh, I sort of reminded of the Get Back film and Ringo watching Paul at the piano. He's like,
Yeah.
I could watch him for days. And you're like, yes, when you see people just channeling something, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It is fascinating. The Get Back stuff is really just amazing how it all comes together. It's just like, and it's so incredible we have all of that. That's history. That's really
Yes,
amazing.
yes.
But yeah, with the stuff they come up with, and how do you come up with the melodies? I know you're at the keyboard, I know you're at the guitar, but like, and you know your notes and everything, but
Yeah.
how does, and I know a lot of them derive off of each other. You can go back to that. I'm sure you know all about, going back to the blues, and we wouldn't have even Elvis and Little Richard without the blue and things before them. So it's like it all builds on one another.
It's true. On the other hand, there is something about, okay, many other people have sat down at the piano, but very few have coughed up "Let It Be." It's just like, okay, there are qualities that are just, I think, difficult to explain.
Yeah, and it is difficult for them to explain it. It's like Paul
And
McCartney, he's so nonchalant about everything too. Dana Carvey's impression of him. I love that. It's like, oh yeah, I wrote yesterday. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, how do you do that? It's amazing. It's the
right,
perfect melody.
and they don't know. If they knew, they would become self-conscious and get in their own way, which I think some musicians, I know I suffer from that, can get that way. So
Yeah, and then it comes to your work. This is your third album out now, digital only, which
yeah.
is makes a lot of sense these days for sure. And how does your process come together? Do you work a lot like these artists, and does melody come to you, lyrics come to you, everything at once?
Yeah, well, on a good day, yes, but those are very rare days, right?
Yeah.
Um, this is my third album under my name. I had another set of albums under a project that was essentially my stuff, and then bands before that. So there's lots of records out there, but um, I think part of it is, for me, I was a trained pianist. That's what I was theoretically going to do all through my childhood, but um, I really got serious about playing guitar when I was supposed to be writing my dissertation, so it was an avoidance mechanism. But I found that the problem for me with playing guitar was I would play the standard rote chords. I know too much music theory. The one chord must go to the four chord, must go to the five, resolve to the one. Like that stuff, even though you're trying not to be led, you just gravitate there. So then I had read a little bit about Joni Mitchell's altered tunings, and so that's interesting. I wonder what that might be. And I just started playing with that and not knowing what the strings were actually. Now I didn't know what was going to happen under my fingers.
Hmm.
So it became much more an act of discovery rather than kind of a constructive thing. And that was very liberating for me because not only, did it get me making some music, but it freed me from my own self-consciousness about rewriting the same song that everyone's always written. Thought, well, that sounds new to me. I'm going to go with it. And then you get enough courage, or I got enough courage to keep writing. So it's only in the last year or two, maybe, that I've grown more comfortable going back. Well, we can play. What's wrong with the same old chords? They're fine too.
Does it hit you at certain moments like you're driving and like, oh, I got the perfect melody in my head. I got to get the old recorder out here and get this idea down.
So that's yes, that does happen. There in the olden days, before I had a serious phone, I even had a pad of paper that I would, while driving, try to write the line that I heard, and I would write solfege syllables, which is like sort of the musical melodic language, just to remind myself what was that melody. Do re mi, do re. Okay, okay, got it. And but then, of course, with the phone, it's a great thing. Many songs on the new record have their gestation points. I have all these little memos on my phone of me driving down the road going, I don't know, something like la 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 da da
Yeah,
da da
yeah.
da, and then making a song out of it. Sometimes the words are there. Often, what appears to be problematically, words come quickly, and I don't understand why they are or what to do with them. And then you're faced with, do I throw them out and come up with a set of words that does make some sense that I feel like I can write a song about? There's a song on the new record called Before My Eyes, which that chorus came quickly, and there were a couple of lines in the song that came right at the very beginning, but I kept trying to rewrite a different song for a year. I think there's 15 or 20 different iterations of it, all trying very hard not to use what came originally until finally I thought, well, what's wrong? Let me just look at those dumb lines. Maybe there's a song there. Maybe I don't have to rewrite the history of the
Yeah.
world in 3 minutes. Maybe this is enough. And once I had did that, the song came really quickly, and it was just a reminder. Sometimes honor the beginner's mind intention, I think.
Some of the best stuff really has the dummy lyrics just left in into the final cut. And it's just like, wow, I
And
can't even.
yeah, every once in a while, the dummy lyric turns out to be pretty smart.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like you don't see it for what I think, and I can imagine for McCartney and others, you don't see it for what it is because it came so quickly. I can't possibly have been brilliant. That's got to be a dummy. But maybe it is, in fact, the workable thing you needed to say.
Yeah, right before my eyes. It's just I like how that just starts out very mellow and has that crescendo. It really picks up. It's just very inspirational to hear a track like that. And so Joni Mitchell is one of your inspirations. You got some Beatles inspiration there too. Jack Bruce is an interesting one
Yeah,
that I can
Jack
hear in here.
Bruce. I guess, hard to imagine some guy who was once in the biggest band, one of the biggest bands
That's
going,
it's incredible.
being relatively overlooked and forgotten. I don't know if forgotten's probably too strong a word, but I feel like I came to Jack Bruce. I didn't even realize that he was
Yeah.
the guy in Cream. I came to him through this jazz record, Carla Bley's Escalator Over the Hill, which is this monstrous epic with everyone who ever did anything in 1971 seeming to show up. And he's on there singing and playing. And from that, I went to his solo records, and it's the solo records that really opened my ears. There's his approach to songwriting. He doesn't do these 20-minute prog rock suites. He doesn't do jazzy, jazz inflected chording like a Steely Dan might get to, but it doesn't quite fit any norm. I don't know how you'd put a lot of Jacques Bruce songs just don't quite sit comfortably in any genre. So that was really appealing to me. And I think there's when I listen back to his stuff, I still feel like I'm ripping him off without knowing it.
Yeah, do you feel that way? Like, because you have so many inspirations, it's like, do you go through and say, well, can we check this song against such and such? Is there now maybe are programs out there that can compare so you're not ripping somebody off? I always wonder about that with people who put, songs, albums together, and basically are kind of frightened of lawsuits or something like that in the future.
I mean, I think certainly there's the George Harrison unconscious plagiarism
Yes.
possibility.
Yeah, I learned that in the history of rock and roll class.
There
It
you
was
go.
just I'm like, what? And then we play them back to back, the chiffons, and
Dulang,
my
Dulang. I
sweet
mean,
Lord.
it is pretty damn close. So okay.
Yeah,
Um,
probably inspired by it and just subconsciously worked
and
it
I
in
think
there.
exactly. So I think a lot of musicians, especially the older we get, the more we've likely heard. It's all in there, and I think it's inevitable that you will draw little fragments of stuff. Sometimes knowingly, sometimes it's a little homage, sometimes unconsciously. I think in the end, there's a lot of music that sounds like other music, but that isn't necessarily to take away from it or to do any harm to the most well-known version of that melody that somebody might have. I was in a class in grad school. They were talking about a musicologist who had done a lot of work on what he called tune families. And he was looking at all these Bach pieces and making down little fragments of phrases and showing how that shows up in so many other work following Bach, blah, 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 blah. And some undergrad in the class came in the next day and said, so by that measure, it looks like Johann Sebastian Bach also wrote all of Irish traditional music. And he went through and it's like, yeah, see, that's the thing. Those little
Yeah.
fragments, you're going to find them in all sorts of places. It's kind of hard to claim ownership in any place.
Yeah, I would always be concerned about something like that. And it's funny because like I'll hear melodies and something like that and just like, wait a minute, it reminds me of this other song. And it's just like I start like humming the song that which could wind up being the lawsuit. It happened with that one artist, Stay With Me,
Oh,
which
yeah. Well, the Tom Petty song. Yeah.
and I was thinking of the Tom Petty. I was like, I won't back down. I won't back down. I just subconsciously started humming that. I'm like, why am I doing that? And then like months later, I hear about the lawsuit.
Yeah. And that was one that I think, I'm sure that the original, whose name escaped
Sam
me.
Smith, who
Yes.
did,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I love his voice and, he's a new artist and I have a
yeah,
feeling he had no idea.
yeah,
He probably heard it in the grocery store, but never paid attention to it.
right.
But there it is. And as you say, many of our listeners are hearing both in that song for
Yeah.
sure. Was too.
Yeah, I mean, a complete different tempo, all of that. But I was just shocked when I heard about that. Like, yeah, great artist. He did a James Bond theme song as well. Just incredible voice. So much
Absolutely.
talent. Yeah. So with your album, how long did that take to put together?
Unlike many of my projects, it came relatively concise, like over the course of a year, usually in bursts. So just because I'm teaching, there is like a
Right.
headspace you get into. You're grinding through the semester, prepping for the next thing. So spring breaks are really great. And I did also I work in a really noisy place. Is where my little studio setup kind of is, which is not good for recording. So I decided to go to rent a little cottage in Vermont, figuring, okay, it'll be quiet. It'll still be kind of, there may be snow on the ground, and I'll get a couple of vocal tracks done at least without a bunch of stuff. But having just a little bit of a window, I think I got two new songs came out of that. Sometimes the drumming on the album is my old friend Ben Whitman. We've been playing since we were roommates in college 40 odd years ago.
Yeah.
He's located in Toronto now, and he's got during COVID, he found out that he could set up his drum kit in his basement with a very nice set of mics, all the stuff one would need, and play to people's tracks. And people would send him files, and he would play and record them and send them back. And he ended up, I think, doing more work that way than he'd been doing prior to the pandemic. So anyway, he's got a setup, and my prior album, we did that because we couldn't get any in COVID. We just couldn't travel, so we did file exchange. But I really missed being in the same room with him. So this time I was like, all right, Ben, I'm going to send you some stuff, and then I'm going to come to Toronto, and we'll just track it in an afternoon, which is sort of the idea. That's an incentive for me because often it's like, well, I've got two songs really ready for Ben, but two songs doesn't justify going to Toronto. Um, Better cough up two more. Then I can justify it. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
weird how I think sometimes the deadline just forces the creative mind to do stuff. And so with this album, I think probably the bulk of the album was written in three different bursts of about a week apiece.
That's interesting. And where did you record up there in Massachusetts or somewhere else
Yeah,
in
no,
that
well,
area?
so most of my parts would have been, and it was mixed in a little tiny room, half the size of my office. So like I can almost touch the walls, right? And as I say, it's in some like rented office space in downtown Lowell. So I can only work at night when none of all the other offices are closed or on the weekends. Um, the drums were done in Toronto with Ben. My friend Greg Porter played bass on many, but not all the tracks. I did that in his basement. We just, the thing is at this point, so many people are recording on their laptops or their phones
It's
even.
amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I
it
can
really is.
go and I can go and bring a decent preamp, plug in a few things, and in 20 minutes I'm ready to go. Let's track. So that was done there. And then I did go to a small studio that I'd done some work in before to track another bassist who played upright on a song. So I needed some place where we could mic up an upright bass. And he put down that and a couple of fretless parts. And then everything else, I guess, was done. Yeah, in my little space. Even oh no, there was a woman who did some harmony vocals, and she had moved to the Cape. She was a former student, graduated and moved to the Cape. So I rented a cottage and said, okay, well, I'll come to you. There's no reason for you to come all the way back up to Lowell. So I rented a cottage for the weekend on the Cape in September, which was very nice. And she came for an afternoon and sang on some things. But it was an unheated cottage and it was dipping into the low 40s. So,
Oh,
I should know better. Anyway, it's nice to be, I guess, mobile is a way to do it in some ways.
yeah, yeah,
Makes everything
yeah.
feel, it makes everything feel a little less precious. Um, there can be the phenomenon of being in a proper, as I will say, studio and it being intimidating. You hear the clock ticking very loudly. Um, and so not being in those environments often is more conducive for me. Partly because you're like, don't stress about it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't really matter. It may not even be a song. I don't know. And I find that the less pressures externally we put on the music, the more creative it becomes. So I was over doing the tracking with Greg in his basement on bass, and just going through my computer was like, oh, we've got another 20 minutes right before dinner. So I don't know what else is in here. And I said, drop D in six. I have no idea what that is. I opened it up. I was like, oh yeah, there's this little thing in D. He's like, I kind of like that. I was like, all right, well, let's play. And then he ended up writing these little interludes, just playing the bass, came up with what I stole as a melody. So it's our first co-write. I was like, oh, that's actually a melody. That's not just a noodly solo. Let's put some words to that. Let's make it part of the composition. So there's kind of a nice organic thing that can happen just because you're not taking any of it very seriously.
And that's with Greg Porter, who
Greg Porter.
has worked with Amy Mann, who I saw with Till Tuesday open up for Hall and Oates
Oh
40
man.
plus years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, Greg, when we were in school, this would have been in Boston in the early 80s. Um, Till Tuesday still hadn't broken. They were a
Yeah.
rumor in town. The Young Snakes was her band before that. But Greg was fixated on Amy Mann. Like that was, I think he even had the rat tail, the whole nine yards.
I
And
remember that.
one night we were walking back through this neighborhood near the Fenway where we lived, and she got out of a car. I guess she was coming out of a tour or something, grabbed her bass and got out of the car and walked across the sidewalk right in front of us at like 2 in the morning into her apartment. And it was like, oh my God, that's Amy Mann. And then you think, yeah, and like 5 years later, he's on the road with her. It's
Isn't that
kind of cool.
crazy? I
Yeah.
know. That's amazing. So the title of this project, Floating on the Dreamline, where does that come from?
It's a line of the opening track, which is called Somewhere There's a Train. Um, and in the song context of the song, it's sort of about this guy in a dead end job, dead end life, and he's fantasizing that there's a party that I'm never invited to, and it's on this train, and it doesn't stop for anybody, especially me. So the bridge of the song says, "Just climb on board. We're floating on the dream line." There's a woman who helps me do a lot of the sort of social media, trying to help market the records, and we had been trying to figure out what the name of the album was. And I said, yeah, she's like, are there themes? I said, actually, yeah, throughout the album, time seems to be almost in every song, but it's hard to come up with an album title
Yeah.
that isn't cliched to death regarding time. So at the last minute, I was like, that bridge is sounding good in the mix. I like that line. Really, wait a minute, that's a good line. That could be the album title.
Yeah.
So it is.
Great people on this release as well. And again, you have another bassist on here too as
Yeah,
well.
Mike Rivard, and he he played in a band that so Ben Whitman unites us all. Ben's the
Your
drummer.
drummer.
Ben, Greg, and I were roommates in college, and we were in a band together all that time. Then I was in a band, the one that ended up in Muscle Shoals. Greg and Ben were the rhythm section off and on for that. Meanwhile, Ben is partnering with Mike in a folk duo who, for a time, were going by the name Jonathan and Jennifer. They renamed themselves The Story. And for a moment in the early 90s, they were poised for big things. They signed to Elektra, and Ben co-produced their albums. So Ben and Mike played on those records. And then Mike has just sort of become one of the mainstays in the Boston music scene. He can play anything, so he plays bass for the Boston Pops. He plays in, show pits that are going on. He played with, I think, Natalie Merchant. He's every once in a while I'll show a clip of somebody from the early 90s, on Saturday Night Live, and I go, "Oh, there's
There.
Mike Ward. I know those people,
Right.
sure enough." But we're all kind of the same age. We've been back and forth and around the bend and just sort of circling back. But it's the first time that Mike and I ever actually did any work together, though we used to hang out and trade underground tapes and stuff like that. But it was really nice to get to bring him in because I knew I wanted an upright bass, which Greg doesn't play. And I also wanted fretless, which Greg used to play, but he would never do it. And Mike's just a phenomenon. So
Totally. Yeah, with Natalie Merchant. And when did Ben Whitman play with Sting? With a particular
his
tour or just on and off?
it was when so Ben's wife Lila Bialy, she's a bit of a presence in Canada, which I know somewhat sounds like I'm big in Japan, but she is big in Canada. She's actually nominated for a Grammy this year, so we
Cool.
have big thumbs up and hoping for the best for them. Anyway, Lila was part of Sting's backup singing troupe for at least a tour or two. At that point, she and Ben were in New York. And I think when Sting was doing his musical that he had sort of taken the Soul Cages and made a plot line out of it, I don't think tickets were selling it so well. So he was doing these little pop-up shows all around Manhattan to drum up interest. And I think he just asked Lila, "Hey, do you know anybody that can sit in on drums really quick?" And she's like, "Actually, yes, my husband
Ah,
he's sat in, he's subbed for Steve Gadd with Paul Simon. He's sat in with Sting on a handful of shows. He's sort of one of those kinds of drummers. He's played with Laurie Anderson. He toured with Erasure, so he can do electronic dance music. He toured with Don Byron. He can do groove jazz stuff. He's
oh
a
wow.
phenomenon. Yeah,
Yeah, these guys have probably so many stories, I'm sure.
they
That
do.
documentary Hired Gun reminds me of that, all these people who had worked with the big names, and
Right.
it's been
But they
out on
don't tell
time.
their stories.
Yeah.
They won't. They really. It's really rare. I mean, it's the right thing to do. I think it's sort of like the Secret Service. You
Yeah.
see things you're
Right.
just not supposed to ever talk about.
Yeah, yeah. They got PR folks and people who guard the gate there, I'm sure. All these big names.
Well, and you don't want to get the reputation for, betraying secrets. Otherwise, you don't get the
Right.
next gig. So
That's true. That's very true. So having female artists, I believe, on a sliver of forever
yes,
is
that's
that
Julia James. She's a former student and fairly recent graduate. We had worked together. I didn't do it this year, but for the prior 5 or 6 years, I did this project. We do these album ensembles where we would select an artist and then perform an album in the fall and perform an album by that same artist in the spring, try to get it as close as we could. And she was part of a group that did Talking Heads. We did Remain in Light and Speaking in Tongues.
cool.
And I just worked with her. She's got a personality. She's a little nuts, but she's really good. And I just thought, all right, now that you're out of school, because it's always there's a lot of great students to work with, but it feels a little bit like you don't want to take advantage of or impose some sort of I'm gonna fail you if you play that song wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wait till they graduate, and I just said, "Hey, Julia, I think you would sound really nice on this." And she did. And I also knew she could pop in a bunch of quick vocal harmonies and just stack gospel chords or whatever. When you see students work, it doesn't take very long to note just sort of their natural inclinations, but also, okay, so how in tune are they? How quickly do they pick up things? Can they keep the harmony stack in their head? Are they going to have to see it all written out? And I could just tell from working with her, no, 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 we'll just say, try the third above. Can you sustain it for the fourth? Okay, great. Boom. Next, 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 next. And she could be a session pro if she so chose to do that. But so it's
Yeah.
nice to give her a little bit of a feature.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives it a lot more texture when you have a different kind of voice coming in there, harmonizing beautifully
Right.
on
Okay.
that track.
Well, that was
Definitely.
it. I was writing that song and I was like, well, it's kind of low. And then it'd
Right.
be a little high for me. I could try. And I just thought, don't embarrass yourself. Get somebody who can actually sing it and make it a duet. And once I knew that I couldn't sing the chorus, as it were, I thought, oh, so structure it that way. Let it be a little bit of a conversational, um, not he said, she said, but just different perspectives, sort of a thing.
Yeah, it's hard to do that falsetto and to sound really like authentic on it. I mean, guys could do that, but like some have mastered it and have done it so well. And I think
I
a
do a
Sting
lot of
singing so high.
yeah, I do a lot of falsetto stuff, but that's different than doing something where it's supposed to be full-bodied, full-throated. And I mean, if I do a falsetto, it's meant to kind of imply some sort of delicacy or vulnerability or something, but that's not quite what I wanted at that moment. And yeah, it made much more sense to bring in somebody who would sing it not from a vulnerable position per se. Yeah.
You have a really interesting track, Whisper, which really stood out to me. It reminds me of the Laurel Canyon days. I saw that documentary on like David Crosby or and on Laurel Canyon and stuff
Yeah.
like. It reminds me so much of that, and it's just so mesmerizing. It really takes me back. Was that how that was inspired? You've heard a lot of that kind of
Uh,
stuff.
that one's called Whisper because, like, yes, the phone memo situation. I was in
Uh,
Canada on a cross-country drive, cross-continent drive, and was staying in a little yurt. And there was somebody in the yurt next to me, and it was, a little late at night. And I had my guitar, and I found this little thing. Ooh, that's kind of a thing, but I don't want to wake anybody up, so I'm just whispering and playing really quietly and whispering. I don't know, a little something like this. Maybe. So that went undeveloped and it was just labeled Canadian Whisper, just as a like that's how I'll remember it. Um, but I think you're right. I think there's a little bit the tuning, the way the guitar is played, could easily be a Joni Mitchell or a David Crosby rethink. The Laurel Canyon thing, I can totally hear where you're talking about that, and
yeah.
because they're sort of layered vocals, it's not the CSN stack of shining harmonies, but there's a quality there that maybe that is unconsciously a throwback to Laurel Canyon, early 70s sort of stuff. But thank you. I'm happy. The compliment is nice.
Love that stuff. Yeah, it just really takes me back when I was a very little kid. Not quite that old yet, but I have an older sister who, it was kind of nice having somebody 7 years older than me who
Mm,
introduced me to Beatles. And then the other sister was kind of into show tunes and she was in a lot of plays and stuff like that. So she was into Barry Manilow. So it's like I liked having that influence of having older sisters who introduced me to stuff, because they're kind of on that bubble of being boomers and I'm an older Gen Xer. So it's kind of nice to have that mix.
yeah.
And I saw CSN so many times. It's just like it
Wow.
just in certain incarnations. Sometimes it was David Crosby who was just with Stephen Stills, and saw all three together at times. Graham Nash on his own. It was just kind of, because they were always coming to town in Cleveland,
Mm,
Ohio, where I grew up.
indeed. There you go. Wow. So Cleveland. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
born in central Ohio, but we didn't live there very long. So, uh,
yeah.
but
Cleveland had a lot of good, interesting musical acts that came out of there, and the one who was closest to me was Eric Carmen, who you might know from All by Myself, and he was with the Raspberries before
raspberries.
that, but went to my high school. He was about 20 years, 18 years older than me.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, he's a rock star. I mean, all the way is amazing song, but there's also Overnight Sensation is one of my
Yeah.
favorite tracks. Um, just because it's so meta about
Yeah.
wanting to have a hit record, and then all the production is evoking what hit record would have meant in
Yeah.
that time. It's brilliant. So wow, that's cool. Alma mater, nice.
What a great musician. But we know a lot of great stuff did come out of Northern Ohio. And I know Chrissy Hine comes to mind too as well,
Sure.
who came from around Akron, which is not too far from Cleveland. But yeah, very interesting. So you came from North Carolina. Is that right? Around
Yes,
Asheville?
Asheville, yeah. Which when I was growing up had next to no music. Which if you're in Asheville now, that's hard to imagine.
I
It's
know. It's so nice.
It's an amazing
Uh,
scene. Even after Helene, even after the hurricane, it's
mm.
still there's a lovely studio there that the Everett Brothers recorded in, and a bunch of people. And the rumor was it was shutting down. But I was just in Asheville last week, and they announced, no, someone's bought it. They're keeping it alive. I think for a moment that region, because it was so hard hit, it was sort of hard to know would the scene, as it were, recover. It seems to be slowly rebuilding itself back, and
Mm.
that's nice to see. But yeah, growing up, there was Billy's Bluegrass Barbecue. If you wanted to gig, you had to play bluegrass. And there was one place that tried to think of itself as an upscale restaurant where you could hear a jazz trio. But I was in a high school band. We played covers in a bar. We were all underage. I don't know, or most of us were underage. I don't know how they got away with letting us in there. But you cut your teeth where you cut your teeth. But in terms of feeling like there was an original music scene, that just was way no, not in a million years. The weird thing is, Warren Haynes was growing up 10 miles from me. We would exactly the same time.
Yeah.
But there was no place where you would collide. You would never know that somebody was making music next to you all the time. Uh, that's really, really changed. And it's interesting to see music scenes evolve because what's happened in Asheville, I think, probably became was started as a singer-songwriter, roots Americana thing, and it's still got a lot of that. But there's a woman who just came out of Asheville last year. I know she's in LA now, and it's a much more a darker Billie Eilish version of singer-songwriter pop production oriented stuff. And I think there's room in Asheville now for all sorts of music that there probably wasn't, certainly when I was growing up, and even in the early days of its big scene. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that's coming out of Asheville. When I visited there in the 90s, I saw that really changing, and these artists were flocking there, and so much great culinary talent there as well. I was like, well, this place, what is it about? And word got out, I think, about
Word
its
got out
beauty. Yeah.
for sure. And there were times when I would go home and go, I wish the word had not gotten out because
Yeah.
where my city is gone. Uh,
Right, right, right.
uh, but lately, I've really embraced that. It's really keeping the town alive in many,
Yeah.
many ways that I could never have envisioned. My mother was part of the forces that transformed the city, so I know a little bit of that backstory, and my sister and I like to blame her for the traffic. So
It's exactly. That's what happens with all the success that happened here in Atlanta. I was part of that crew of people in the late 80s who moved down here and just there were jobs there, you know. It's like there were the opportunities was abundant compared to Ohio. So it was just really booming and wow, look at all the success now. Atlanta is just a mega city. It's on that
yeah.
level with, LA, New York, Chicago.
It is. I mean, as a music scene, certainly it became bigger, I would argue, for a little while than New York or LA. It was the place to be.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of talent and so many successful things happened here, in so many different disciplines from,
Mm,
entertainment through sports and everything else. And filming a lot of movies here as well.
yeah.
Some TV shows are just shot right down the street from me, Will Trent. It's just like a hop, skip, and a jump, and they're shooting in this nature preserve I live near. It's like, why are they over here? What kind of scene? I never even watched the show, but like they're over here. Things are constantly happening here. It's still an amazing place to be, but yeah, traffic, a nightmare as well. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what comes with the territory.
I love, I mean, there were, Asheville's had a lot of movies filmed there. And there's one it's a great movie anyway, but being there, Peter Sellers'
Love
Hal
that.
Ashby film was done in
Hmm.
Asheville at the Biltmore House. And but I love it because for one 5-second moment, there's an exterior shot of a limousine driving into the Biltmore House gates, and it passes the King of the Road hamburger joint where I used to go after high school and have, nasty greasy fries and a milkshake or whatever. It's long gone. So it's preserved for me in just that little scene that some second unit guy did quickly. But there are films preserve places. So your neighborhoods may, in fact, you can go back in 20 years and say, see, that's what it used to be like here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very true of this area. But I hope Asheville is on its road to recovery. I was nervous when that hurricane came through. I was like, I'm ready to be out of power, which I was for 20 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, but it went much more to the east. Who would have ever thought? I thought Asheville was very protected. I was like, I could retire here one day, and not have to worry about, really horrible weather. Not as bad a heat as you get down here. It's a little
Right.
better up there, but. Gosh, that was just so disappointing and so sad to see that happen.
So we're hoping that's it for a while.
Hopefully, yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
going to be a long recovery. What was surprising to me was I knew water was obviously very destructive, but I wasn't aware of how much damage the winds had done. And if you're driving around the Blue Ridge Parkway around the city, you'll just round the corner and there'll be whole swaths where the woods are just half gone. And you realize
Mm.
certain air currents took out all these trees. My mother was telling me they're really concerned now about invasive species because the canopy is gone and all this stuff will creep in and grow. And, um, you know, I thought, and there are bigger things to worry about post hurricane, but who would have thought you had to worry about that too?
Yeah. Yeah, just so sad. And that was the vulnerability of it are the hills
Yeah.
and the roads getting washed away. 'Cause that's to get up into places. It just
Yeah.
was so heartbreaking and wish the best for them. Hopefully it never happens again. It's
Yeah.
just that was a fluke, hopefully. And yeah, we're ready for another ice storm coming as I speak. So hopefully we don't have one. We had one back in around 2000 in this area, which, we're not prepared for that kind of stuff in the Southeast. It's just it's scary stuff. Whatever little snow we get, sometimes we've gotten, a certain amount of snow here, but it could be kind of scary. We're not prepared for it.
You don't have the plows and the sand crews and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe for the interstates, but for the rest of the roads, even main roads, it's tough to clear them if something does happen, and it does every now and then. So it's a nightmare, really, totally. But yeah, great new release. It's out in March of 2026 as we
Yes.
speak here.
I think the
Yeah,
sixth is the first Friday in March is the date that I'm aware of.
excellent.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of singles out. There'll be one more single in advance of the album, which I'm in the middle of finishing the video for that. That's the
Good.
Somewhere There's a Train song that the album title comes from. I filmed my bits as the lowly, lonely guy in Helper, Utah, which I read about in the New York Times and said, "Oh my goodness, look, there's these old gas stations totally restored and it looks beautiful. And what's across the street? I hope it's not a strip mall. No, it's a train track. This is ideal." So I went out to help her and film that. And then we're going to shoot the party scenes next weekend and then there'll be a video. So
There you go. And you're also a video artist as well. So how
I
does that
think
feel like that? Yeah.
every musician at this point is a video artist, a graphic designer, a social media marketer. You've got to do it all.
Right.
You can get your music out, and that's a wonderful thing, but you have to be constantly working um, to address all these other things that have to be attended to that the big labels used to do or that management companies used to do. But, a lot of fairly well-known artists are still rolling up their sleeves and just every day getting up to grind out more work to try to get the music out to an audience. It's
Very changed businesses you've
a
seen.
very
It's
changed business. On the other hand, if you look at it as a creative endeavor, then it's like, ooh, maybe I'll learn how to do animations. Maybe I'll learn how to do this. Maybe I'll learn how to do that. And if you can, I think the most successful people that do these sort of ways of using social media to promote music, they find a creative way that they can express themselves in the so-called marketing aspect as well. Even Robert Fripp and his wife Toya Wilcox, their little goofy Sunday brunch things, they thought, well, that's good for a novelty one-off, but they made a thing out of that. And I shudder to think that my students might know him more from those than they would from any of his
Right.
work with King Crimson or whatever. Uh, but I look at that as people that just take advantage of ways of doing fun things. So good for them.
Yeah, yeah, it is. You have to expand your horizons, especially with social media and all of that stuff. You got a regular main website as well?
I do, yes. AlanWilliamsEvidence.com, which was the title of an older record, but
Good,
yeah, it's out
good.
there. And because I'm a professor, there are some long-winded pieces, think pieces from Alan. So it's a relatively rich website, and there's a ton of videos because
Good.
I just got into making videos. My prior group, Birdsong at Morning, we did an album where we made a video for every song. So there's a lot of content out there, and I learned a lot about image and music, how you think about them at the same time. That was an album where we decided early on we were going to do the video thing. So even the songs themselves were somewhat written with the notion that there might be a visual to help tell a story or to comment on or what it might be. So anyway, video. I'm a big movie buff, so visuals and music make sense to me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, best wishes to you. This
Thank
is
you, and thanks so
absolutely
much,
wonderful
Rob.
speaking with you. Very
Really
interesting new release. Get it out there. It's digital only. And yeah, best wishes.
thank
Definitely.
you. Really good to talk to you. Thanks again.
Nice for you to stop by. Have a good one.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Isn't that awesome? I don't know. Somehow Billy Joel always comes up in this podcast. I'm a huge fan, but it's not like I obsess. I mean, you can go to other podcasts and hear some really crazy obsessions. But it's like the 6 degrees of separation. He just like, it's constant. And I've had a lot of Billy Joel related things happening on this podcast. Spoke with the former drummer, his sax player as well. So it all keeps circling back to Billy. Just he can't help it. He's always circling in my life at least, and probably millions of others too. And probably everybody and their brother has a Billy Joel story. Seeing concerts, buying the albums for the first time, all that fun stuff. But definitely definitely makes a huge impact. So I am just so thrilled to talk with somebody who really enjoys Billy as much as I do, or maybe not quite as much. Anywho, I hope to see you all very, very soon. Have a good one. Take care.